How's it going, guys? My name is Savarsh, and today we're taking a ride in my E60 BMW M5. Now, for those of you new to the channel, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you guys like it. You can be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like what you see. Now, this is a 2010 BMW M5, and it's actually one of my favorite cars, or at least top of my list of cars that I would get for not a lot of money. This car, when it was brand new, was about $100,000 in today's money. Right now, you can have one of these for 15 to 20 grand, and on the low end you can have them from between 10 and 15 with some work, of course. But well-sorted examples like this one can be had between 15 and 25, but the older ones are definitely 15 grand territory. That makes this a crazy bargain. Now, if you guys didn't know why this car is so special, this is the first M5, and actually the only M5, with a huge 5-liter V10 naturally aspirated engine revving to almost 8,500 RPM. Now, high revving V10s are really rare in the car world, but this is a very well-designed car, and they made it to be sort of an exotic with 4 doors, obviously. And today, I'm gonna see if you can have one of these for 15 grand and actually daily drive the thing without going broke. So, let's check it out. Now, the first thing we're gonna do is we are going to check out this awesome engine. And this is a big, actually, I just opened up the trunk. Whoops. Actually, since we're here, this is a good starting point. This trunk is enormous. It's way bigger than my S-Class trunk, and it has room for things underneath. Now, unfortunately, because it's an M5, it doesn't have a spare tire. It only has this inflation device, and it has a huge battery right here, right in the middle of the two unibody frame rails. So that is for better weight distribution. That is for better balance, because in a big car like this, you do want more of the weight in the back over the rear wheels. But let's actually open up the hood like I originally intended. All right, there we go. And ta-da! This is a 5-liter MV10 from BMW. This is an awesome engine because it has individual throttle bodies or independent throttle bodies. I don't know which is right. You guys keep telling me different things, but it has individual throttle bodies with this awesome plenum here that collects all the air from these 2 air boxes. It has 2 mass airflow sensors. It has a fully variable Vanos system right here, and it's just awesome. It makes 500 horsepower and about 380 foot-pounds of torque. The thing is, this, as a naturally aspirated engine with such a high rev range, it makes most of its power right at the tippy top. So it's 500 horsepower at around 8,000 RPM. So below there, it doesn't really feel like a 500 horsepower car, to be honest with you. It feels more like just a regular sedan, just like a regular luxury sedan, maybe like an S-Class. As soon as you get past that 5,000, 5,500 RPM barrier, that's when this thing comes alive. Now, one of the awesome features about the E60 M5 or the E65 series in general is this styling. Now, this styling wasn't the best received when it came out. This was styling made by a designer called Chris Bangle, and you guys will know him because you can just look up Bangle Butt on Google and you'll know what that is. It's that nasty rear end of the 7 series and also the 5 series. This wasn't very well received, but honestly, I think this has grown on me. I think this looks better now than it did back then when this car was new. This is like angel wings. It's really cool when it lights up. The car is very handsome. It has very good proportions, and the M5 editions are awesome. The M5 editions being the rear bumper, the side skirts, they come out a bit, lowered suspension, the wheels. These are modified, I believe. I don't think you can get them in black, but the owner of this car has painted them. So you get the side skirts, you get these M5 awesome slats here, and you have that nice M5 bumper, and it looks very handsome, very chiseled, and very purposeful. In addition, they saved a lot of weight on this car. Even though this car is not exactly the most light thing in the world, this thing is aluminum, and it's very, very light. I mean, there's a lot of body panels that are simply aluminum instead of steel, and it makes sense in a car like this. You definitely want to keep all the weight down and all the weight down low. Now, this engine actually is shifted back a little bit from where it would be if they use the regular mounts for the 550i or the 535i. Those engines sit a little bit further forward than this. This is... I'm not going to say it's front mid, but it's more towards front mid than the other 5 Series are. And that is a really good thing because this thing handles like a champ. So as you can tell, it's raining and it has been snowing earlier today. The roads aren't the best for doing a really pants on fire run, but I want you guys to see what the handling is like. So if you guys want to see what the interior is like and all those quirks and features, to quote Doug DeMuro, you can watch my previous video about everything that you didn't know about the E60 M5, and hopefully you learn yourself on that. But right now, I can't wait to take a drive. So let's start with the basics. Starting up this car isn't as much of an event as you'd think with the 500 horsepower V10 under the hood, but it ain't bad. So I have my key right here, and this is a keyless go type system. So I could literally put the key anywhere in the car. I could just place it down there, or I can put it right in here. That is a little key holder slot. And then I just press the brake and start the engine. There we go. Listen to that chime. It's kind of nice. So the car is alerting me that it's 35 degrees outside, and I will have to be careful because this has summer tires. This has Hankook Ventus Evo 2s on it, and they're not really good for cold weather like this, and especially because there were a few flurries. So I'm not gonna go too nuts, but I want to show you guys what this car can do in a daily driver setting. So we're gonna just take it for a ride around the park. Right now I am in Watchung Reservation in New Jersey. It's a really good sort of driving road. There's a lot of mix of straightaways and sweepers and technical stuff, and I think you guys will get an idea of how good this car can handle and how good this car sounds, and if it's good enough to have as maybe an only car, or if it's a really good bargain for what you get for around 15 grand. And right now, spoiler alert, it really is. So first off, this car is unlike a traditional automatic. Now this has an automatic mode, but it's not like any automatic that you would get in any other car because it doesn't actually have a park. So this shifter has a reverse, neutral, it has a shift-tronic, like a Tiptronic mode, and then it also has drive, automatic drive, and sport mode. So it doesn't actually have a park. So what you have to do is put it in neutral like a manual car, and then you have to pull the parking brake. But putting it in gear is actually pretty easy. All you have to do is shift it to the right like that, and you can see that it is in first gear. Now this is in full manual mode. I control it with these paddles. I can start in first or second, and I have a little gauge right there that controls the ferocity of the shifts, meaning how fast the shifts go, and I can control that with this little button right here. So I like to have my shifts pretty firm, and it actually is better for the clutch to have your shifts a little firmer because that reduces the lag between the clutch engaging and disengaging, and it slips it less, so you actually save more clutch if you make this a little more firm and sporty. And firm and sporty is the point of this car. So we're right now in P400 mode. That is the performance with 400 horsepower, and that numbs the engine a little bit, that numbs everything around the car. But the car's party piece is this M button. So you press this M button, I have MDM on the dash, I have a little M in a circle, and MDM is M dynamic mode. It puts it immediately into P500 sport mode, which is power, and the EDC, which is a stability control, and that is to level 2. So that gives me a significant amount of slip, but it also makes sure that I don't go careening off into the bushes. At least that's the idea. So we're in drive. I'm gonna take the parking brake off, and we're gonna go for a little ride. Now the SMG engages pretty well, especially from stop and go traffic. I've heard a lot of really bad horror stories from these transmissions, but it's not actually too bad, especially if you put it in automatic mode in P400 mode, where it's not trying to you know, strip the teeth off the cogs of the gears in the transmission. It is very livable. I mean, it's not anything close to an automatic, but it is livable if you know that it's not a real automatic transmission, and it's a reasonable facsimile. Now, another thing after we're going over these bumps is the suspension. I do have to say that suspension in this car is quite unforgiving, especially for a car of this size. Now, this car is not a light car, even though BMW is all about the driving experience and adding lightness and all that stuff. It's actually quite heavy. It's 4,100 pounds or thereabouts. Now, even though this car does have 500 horsepower and almost 400 foot-pounds of torque, that does get it moving when it's already moving. That does overcome that inertia, but it doesn't feel light. It doesn't feel light on its feet, and they spring this car pretty hard. So if you're going to be daily driving this thing, just make sure that it's not going to be the smoothest thing in the world. If you have maybe spouses or children that really care about that kind of stuff, with the SMG transmission and with the suspension, it might not be the best thing for someone with a family, even though it does have 4 doors and 5 seats. So let's see if we can get a little bit of performance out of this one. So the thing I love about this car is that it revs and revs and revs. This thing revs to about 8,200 RPM. And for a V10, that is absolutely insane. I mean, usually when you have bigger engines and more cylinders, you don't rev that much just because the piston speeds and you have the crazy amount of force going on in that crankcase. You need to have something very, very strong. But with this, it feels light on its feet. At least the engine does. The engine feels like it wants to rev. It feels very, very exotic. I don't know if this has the same firing order or a similar firing order than the Lamborghini Gallardo or Audi S8 or R8, but it certainly feels nice. And the SMG really comes into its own when you start to shift at the upper registers. Now, it makes a lot of sense after about 4,000 RPMs. That's when everything sort of opens up. And between 4,000 and 8,000 RPM is where the real magic happens. Unfortunately, this road is a little wet. We had some flurries this morning, and on these summer tires, I know I'm just making excuses at this point, but these summer tires are not the most compliant when it comes to this sort of mountain road driving. But that's sort of the point with this car. I mean, you can drive this every day. Let's say you get off of work, you can go to work and come back and you're tired, and you can just take the long way home, and you can shift like an F1 driver. Oh my God, this is so good. Now here's a more technical section, and we want to be really sort of extra careful here. There's a Porsche Panamera up ahead. That's sort of the competition for this car. But we want to make sure that we don't go off on any of these corners, because there is no room for error here. But I love the downshifts in this car. The downshifts come really quickly. It's not like a DSG, it's not like a double clutch gearbox, but it is good enough. I would prefer the manual, the 6-speed manual that they had in 08 and up, but it's not bad, especially for a car that had this sort of technology in its infancy. It works very well. Oh, that Panamera's going for it. So another thing I love about this car is that oh God, I'm just trying to concentrate. Another thing I love about this car is the intake noise. Now, it doesn't have much in the way of exhaust noise, but the intake noise from those that intake plenum with the individual or independent throttle bodies is just intoxicating. Now, you can open it up with a intake, but honestly, I love the way it sounds stock. I love that it's very understated. I love that it's not something that's too gaudy. It's not going to draw too much attention, because after all, it is a 5 Series with basically a body kit on the outside. And this is as close to a factory sleeper as you can get. Now the car in front of me is a Panamera 4S, which has a decent amount of power and it has all-wheel drive. I think I probably have him licked on power, but definitely not the all-wheel drive. And I'm pretty sure he's not on summer tires. So we're not trying to hang out the ragged edge, but this is so much fun. So the thing you want to do when a good road ends is you want to turn around and do it again. Is he waiting for us? Hey, how you doing, man?
How you doing, dude? I love the M5.
Oh, thanks. Dude, your car is awesome too. We made a friend, guys. So even on these backcountry roads, this car makes a ridiculous amount of sense. I just love the way this thing handles the corners. Now the body roll is the body roll of a 4,000 pound car. It's not like the GTR where it basically defies the laws of physics. BMW did make a very good handling car from its 5 Series. Now the 5 Series was quite stiff to begin with. I know the E39 was so stiff. The E39 was the generation before this car, but it was so stiff that it didn't actually need a roll bar, a front strut bar rather. This is sort of the same thing. They had a lot of stiffening elements. They included a lot of welding. They used a lot of aluminum. It is a very, very good platform as far as weight distribution. It's just an all-around great platform, and the fact that they put this V10 in with, frankly, an awesome 7-speed SMG, it makes a lot of sense on these roads, guys. I mean, you can say what you want on the forums about failures, and I will get into that when we talk about the value and depreciation and all that. But right now, when it works, oh my God, mwah, it is so, so good. Now, oh, that shifting is so good, and I'm shifting at like 4 grand. It is just amazing. So let's do one slight pull to redline. I'm just gonna let you listen to how that sounds. And here we go. Oh my God, that is just smile-inducing. Oh, have a grin from ear to ear. This is so good. And for 15 grand, you cannot beat this. You cannot beat this experience for $15,000. I don't care what you have. I don't care if it's an AMG that you buy for $8,900 like I did. This experience is exotic as it comes. And for 15 grand, you really, you'd be hard pressed to find anything that performs like this and sounds like this and gives you that thrill every single day of the week. All right, now that we're behind the Subaru, I should probably talk about the bad stuff. So the elephant in this very spacious, very accommodating room are these guys right here. That is the SMG transmission, and although I just said that it makes a lot of sense on roads like this, and it actually isn't as bad in traffic as people make it out to be, it is bad in reliability. Now, SMG pump failures are very, very common, and they are very, very costly. So if an SMG pump goes, which controls the hydraulic fluid that allows you to shift and allows the clutch to go in and out, if that goes out, then you're out basically $1,500 to $2,000. There are rebuild kits, there are DIY solutions that you can do, but if you're buying one of these cars, odds are you're probably not going to be doing DIY stuff to begin with. I'd like you to do that because #wrench every day, right? But if you're going to be taking it to a independent mechanic, if you're going to be taking it to the BMW dealer, which you definitely shouldn't do if you want your wallet, you are going to be charged a lot of money, and these failures are pretty prominent on this this platform. Another similarly sized elephant in this black leather room is the engine. Now the engine, while sounds great and it performs great, and it's a great all-around engine that should be in smaller cars but isn't for some reason. I don't know what you're doing, BMW. The engine has some reliability concerns, mainly the rod bearings. Now, the rod bearings are a big deal if you want your engine to survive. The rod bearings are basically the only thing that's keeping your connecting rod from hitting your crankshaft and making metal on metal and basically destroying your engine in a matter of a few seconds. So the rod bearings in this car, and basically all cars that have an M badge on them, meaning the E90 M3, the E60 M5, the E39 M5, even the E46 M3 had rod bearing issues, meaning that they would wear prematurely. Now, I've seen on the forums people with 60,000 miles, even down to 40,000 miles, had issues with their engines basically launching themselves because the rod bearings failed. Now, this car actually has 110,000 miles, and it doesn't actually have any signs of rod bearing damage, but then again, it's one of those things where it just goes. There's no warning. So if the owner of this car hasn't done the rod bearings by now, it is very likely a ticking time bomb with that engine, with the rod bearings and a very big repair bill. Now, the rod bearings, if they go completely, you'd have to rebuild the entire engine, and the engine in this car is crazy expensive. So that is, you're going to be spending at least 10 grand on a used engine if you want to rebuild this. I don't know how many, maybe 20 grand, and that is more than the cost of the car, especially considering you can get one of these for 15 to 20 grand in any case. So yeah, that is a really big concern. If I was doing this, if I was buying the car, then what I would do is I would just prophylactically, I would do the rod bearings. And it is sort of a pain in the butt just because the car doesn't allow itself to be worked on that easily. I mean, you will likely have to drop the subframe, you will have to drop the oil pan, and it is messy, but it can be done in a weekend with some decent hand tools. You can go to Harbor Freight and get some jacks and something that will, and an engine stand that'll let your engine sit in the same place while you lower the subframe. But that is something that needs to be done. The rest of the car actually holds up fairly well. There aren't any issues with subframe cracking like there was in the E46. There aren't any issues with the interior quality. The interior quality, although my friend did allude to the fact that this leather isn't the highest quality, I actually disagree with him. I love this leather. I think it's worn extremely well for a car of this age. This car is almost 10 years old, and you can't tell that this car has 110,000 miles. So that is very good on BMW's part. But as far as an entire package, would I buy this car knowing that the engine could give me a fault and the SMG could give me a fault, and basically everything else around it should be pretty much good to go? I think I would. Honestly, for 15 grand, if you can save up another 5 grand, let's say if you have $25,000 to spend on a car and you want this sort of performance and you want something that is sleeper enough, but it will get people interested, like the Porsche Panamera guy that I just met that loved M5s, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anything in this price range that can compete with this car in the used car marketplace. Now, what I would do is I would make sure you get a PPI, a pre-purchase inspection. I would also make sure that you get something with a lot of options, something that has the interior that you want. There are different options for color for the inside. There's a really cool red interior that just looks awesome. And also make sure you get the heads-up display. Heads-up display is always a good thing in any car. You should probably get the heated and cooled seats because you definitely don't want the shoulda worked harder version. But for 15 grand, this car is an insane value. Just make sure that certain key components of the running of the engine and transmission are taken care of. Now, you can pay a little more. You can go up to 25 grand or so, and you can get a 6-speed manual. So those started in 2008. And 6-speed manual basically takes out the SMG pump from the equation and all the SMG failures, and it gives you a more direct feeling to the car. But 6-speed manuals are also, it changes the dynamic of the car. Maybe some people like it, maybe some people don't like it for daily driving. In traffic, it can be a little tiresome and bothersome, so just kind of teach their own. For me, I would probably take the 6-speed manual because I don't really care about traffic. Traffic doesn't really bother me, and my left leg needs a workout anyway, along with the rest of my body. But having said that, I want to know from you guys. I want to know if you guys have owned this car or want to own this car. Does this car make sense to you? Does it make sense to have a 500 horsepower daily driver? Does it make sense to have a car that might have some mechanical issues that might be potentially ruinously expensive. To me, it makes sense, but I always want to have a conversation with you guys. So you can contact me on Instagram and Twitter. That's at @TheRealTavarish. Facebook.com/AskTavarish and AskTavarish@gmail.com is my email. I love to hear from you guys. So big shout out to you guys that watch these videos and comment and like. I always enjoy that. And big shout out to Turo, who gave me this car. They gave me this car from a guy named George, who is a really, really awesome owner, really good communication, and a really clean and nice car. So yeah, big shout out to them, and I'll see you guys next time.